Hey there and welcome to That News You Care About, a weekly video game news show from the folks over at That Nerdy Site. Today is Monday, January 25th, 2021, and I'm one of your hosts, Logan Wilkinson. Joining me this week is my Phoenix son, Trevor Starkey,
Hello.
and Long Island's biggest sports fan, West Mississippi, Cameron Abbott. No, now you can say hello, Trevor. We're going.
All right. Hello.
Fast today. There we go.
Hey, what's going on, nerds?
Clearly, you're not used to doing this with three people again.
Everybody gets introduced at the same time. That's what we're doing in this episode. How are you both doing? Trevor, it's been, I think, 48 hours.
It's been
roughly.
A day.
Yeah.
Yes, since we talked. So yeah, it rained here in Phoenix over the weekend / today, and my house has a slight leak in the roof, so that flared up a little bit today. That I've been trying to deal with that. There was concern that I might not be able to do the podcast earlier because the leak is like, 4 feet that way, off from my arms and stuff. But it has slowed down enough that I was able to make it for the show, and I've muffled it enough. So I think we should be good so long as like the rain doesn't flare back up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't hear it on your end at the very least from here, so I will say that's a good sign. But yeah, this is also, should be mentioned, first podcast that I've been on at the very least. We're now into the Biden era. We did it, guys. We made it through at least those 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Mazel tov, man. But we are not talking about fun, happy things like Joe Biden being president. We're talking instead about a great tragedy that has befallen the video game industry. Particularly if you're a fan of excellent skateboarding video games. Vicarious Visions is being merged into Blizzard, and I think it's fair to say that I can think of no sadder skateboarding-related news in the world this past week. Cameron, you're also a big Tony Hawk Pro Skater fan as well. Share your thoughts on when you saw this news. That Trevor, actually, out of all of us, is the one who I think dropped it first into Slack and broke the news for all of us Pro Skater fans.
So I picked up on the news like when it was announced. I want to say it was announced on Friday or Saturday.
Let's go back. It was
Friday.
Yeah, Friday.
Yeah. So, like, anybody who paid attention to our Game of the Year stuff knows that most of us here were massive fans of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2. They're potentially the best remastered / remake that was, Final Fantasy VII Remake aside. I'd probably say it's the best, without a doubt, it's the best remaster of all time. I don't think there's really any possible competition in that regard.
I thought Resident Evil 2 was pretty good too, but
I think Resident Evil 2. You know what? Here's the thing. I think Resident Evil 2 definitely is in the running for that. If I were to probably say 2 remakes in the last as long as I can remember, Resident Evil 2, and then Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2, which back to back, Resident Evil 2 was 2019, and and then so year after year we had some really solid remakes coming out. If you also include Final Fantasy VII in that, the last 2 years we had just awesome awesome remake opportunities. But I think that what we're seeing here is a result not having anything to do with anything poor or a bad decision that was being made by Vicarious Visions. When you look at what's been happening with Blizzard, without a doubt, I think you can make the same argument that I've been making for several years that BioWare isn't BioWare anymore. I think you can definitely make that exact argument at this point with Blizzard not being Blizzard anymore. I mean, Blizzard was the studio, the only studio that now has a standard practice of it'll ship when it's finished is Valve. Blizzard shipped Warcraft 3 Reforged, and it was an absolute dumpster fire. From its netcode to its the online matchmaking to its like dubious legal like requirements for modifications because they don't want another Dota experience happening. For those of you who don't know, Dota was spawned out of a game called Defense of the Ancients, which was a mode on Warcraft 3 originally. That spawned off into its own game and like basically established the League Dota format of third-person top-down tower lane running experience. And I think that and so like Reforged came out, absolute dumpster fire. There has been rumors for a long time that Vicarious Visions has been working on a Diablo 2 remaster. This might be the final indication to be like, yeah, it's probably true. Tony Hawk and the thing is, the success of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2, which at its core is an Activision property.
And so was Crash before that.
And so is Crash before that. So you have a studio that has very much proven that they can do a kick-ass remaster.
Yeah, they're up there with Bluepoint at this point for me in terms of reliably great
absolutely.
quality coming out from them.
Yeah. And like doing smart minor iterations on the original content itself, in both cases with Crash and especially with Tony Hawk. But I like, you look at Blizzard not really being Blizzard anymore. A lot of the original talent, like the heads of departments, have left. The only team that I would say, if you look at them, is like relatively the same is maybe the Overwatch team. But that's it. Like the other teams are not there anymore. Like Shadowlands came out this last year to, if you play WoW, that matters to you. If you don't play WoW, it doesn't matter a thing. But it should be noted that like the prior expansion, Battle for Azeroth, was not received well, did not sell well, did not do well. So you move away from so you look at that, and there's like this track record of minor hits and a lot of misses. And so I think bringing in the talent from Vicarious Visions is a smart business move by Activision. But it all but spells the death of a potential continuation of this Tony Hawk remaster saga that we were all hoping for. So honestly, I think at the end of the day, it's not like this was an indie studio that got gobbled up. Like these were partners. No. And like my real sincere hope is that Vicarious Visions being brought into Blizzard will make Blizzard better, but my expectations are that you're going to see that Vicarious Visions team get pieced apart, like bit by bit, to different departments in Blizzard, to different teams, and hopefully good stuff comes out of it, but I don't expect much, because at this point, Blizzard isn't Blizzard anymore. It's not the bastion of quality, of consistency. Like this is a studio that even when a game was pretty much finished, because they deemed it the quality lacking, they canceled projects. Whether that was a Warcraft click adventure game, whether it was StarCraft Ghost. StarCraft Ghost was a finished product, but they felt it was so subpar in quality that it wasn't worth publishing, and so they canceled it. These are people who have literally invested tens of millions of dollars into projects and canceled them. But under this era of big bad Daddy Kotick is now holding the purse strings. It's you don't have that freedom anymore to make a decision like that, and you end up shipping busted products. And I think I really think that'll probably continue. I don't see that changing.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one too, because obviously, like in the piece by GamesIndustry.biz, like they mentioned how, longtime Activision publishing studio Vicarious Visions will be fully dedicated to Blizzard titles going forward.
And Bloomberg followed up, Jason Schreier followed up, basically saying that they are working on that Diablo 2 remaster.
Yeah, and I think that's a shame. I mean, it's a shame if you're a Tony Hawk, Pro Skater fan, and you really hoped for at the very least, a remake of 3, which it certainly, I think, is the best Tony Hawk game. I think Frank agrees with me as well. And even if you don't think it's the best, I can't speak for Cam, but I'm sure you think it's a great one. And so that would have at least been like a good kind of, cap off for that. But even, I think, touching on something that Cam said, it's the fear that this team, I think, has built such a great reputation now for both remakes or remasters, whatever you want to kind of consider them, and just seems to have such a good kind of handle on the craft of what they're doing. And I'm in the same boat as Cam, where I think this team's going to kind of get slowly or not so slowly kind of like picked apart a little bit and shifted around to kind of different departments than Blizzard to help out on whatever projects it might have. And so I think that any kind of Vicarious Visions magic that is there is going to kind of, over time, kind of slowly kind of dissipate away. I also think it's an interesting decision. Like, I don't know, like, it's not, I mean, obviously it's not what I would have done or I would have wanted from Vicarious Visions to kind of do next, but I'm also curious. I mean, Diablo 2 Remake is obviously, now Jason Travis can report, is what they're going to do next. Even that is still kind of an interesting choice, an interesting direction for this team. Like, that's obviously a very different kind of game than either Crash or Tony Hawk Pro Skater was. And so I'm kind of curious to see how they'll handle that project and how much the team will kind of carry over to that project. But yeah, it's sad as a fan of Tony Hawk Pro Skater, and I also think I would say I'm cautiously maybe pessimistic for like what we're going to see next, because I just don't know how much faith I have that they'll be allowed to kind of stay together as like the same core team. Trev, you're the one who actually posted it in Slack. I mean, and you're also the one who's the least kind of personally attached to Tony Hawk Pro Skater or Crash. So I am curious, what your thoughts on everything have been.
And maybe that distance gives me this maybe more contrarian perspective, because I think...
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love it.
I think it's actually potentially really good for Vicarious Visions in that...
Sure.
Obviously, Blizzard has shown in recent years, Activision Blizzard has shown in recent years, a willingness and an interest in revisiting those old properties and remastering them. Mm-hmm. We saw a Diablo remaster, obviously the ill-fated Warcraft one, but then even kind of classic World of Warcraft kind of coming back. Clearly, there is a Blizzard fan base that is interested in that kind of stuff. And so getting a team that has proven that they're really good at kind of polishing and fixing up and repairing and modernizing code like that with Vicarious Visions might just put more eyes on these products, and Diablo 2 I imagine will sell leaps and bounds better than a Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2, just because of the fan base that is that rabid, and especially people that were turned off by Diablo 3 and didn't want to, didn't like that. They want more Diablo 2, or they want kind of their old Diablo 2. Going back to what you mentioned, Cam, of StarCraft Ghost. StarCraft Ghost looked like was kind of put on ice back in 2006, so prior to the merger with Activision. So I think, I think we do definitely see kind of the same thing that we've seen with EA and kind of how they handle a lot of their studios. Of they kind of focus on their big properties, and if studios aren't performing well, they maybe dismantle that studio and kind of put people around. So I think maybe we are seeing a little bit of that here with Activision Blizzard in the same case, because they merged in 2008, and so we've seen the changes on the Blizzard side of things in quality ever since then, going back even to, what was it, Error 42 on the Diablo 3 storefront, back when it was like a pay-to-win, like, auction house kind of thing. Like,
there was the auction house, there was the massive connectivity issues and like, server issues that they had for it. It's like Diablo 3's launch, and probably first, I'd probably say year or two, was an absolute just shit show.
Yeah, but I would argue I would argue they came back from it pretty well. They bounced back.
Sure.
They took that feedback, and so Blizzard is still...
Diablo 3 is an awesome game. It
has a little bit of autonomy in that regard. Yeah, so I'm hopeful that this opportunity, yes, for fans of Tony Hawk Pro Skater. Like I basically put in the chat when I shared this, like we had talked, many a times that how cool would it be if Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2, did the same thing that Master Chief Collection did of just adding reach and stuff like that into kind of their package. How cool would it have been if Tony Hawk added 3 and Underground and whatever other, the core games that people are looking for. Obviously, with Vicarious, with them announcing that not only is Vicarious being absorbed by Blizzard, that they're just not going to be working on any of those things. That's unfortunate for people that were looking for that, especially because I imagine that game sold it cracked the top 20 for NPD last year, so I imagine it sold better than they were anticipating it would. But I still think that even Tony Hawk and how well it sold would pale in comparison to a Diablo 2 remaster. So if they can kind of take that magic that they've shown in Crash and then in Tony Hawk up to this point, and revive Diablo with that, I think there will be a huge outpour of support and I think that'll help keep the developers that are there comfortable for a while. So that's kind of where I sit on everything.
Yeah, I mean, Trevor brought up a great kind of contrarian point. I mean, certainly the opportunity is there for Vicarious to really do something great. For me, I think it is just a question of how much support they'll have to nail Diablo 2, and how much tinkering there may or may not be behind the scenes that kind of prevents them from really nailing this. Because, I mean, obviously if they hit like a home run with Diablo 2 Remake, it's a huge platform they're kind of doing it on, just not being sure of how much support and direction they'll be given on that. But yeah, it is a big news, especially if you wanted any more, I guess either Crash or Tony Hawk Pro Skater remakes come out of Vicarious Visions. You are unfortunately going to be waiting a while. We are going to pivot.
One last thing.
You have
before
one more
pivot.
Final thing.
So
It's gonna be a hard pivot, yeah.
Just as a reference point, in season 1 of that Ultimate Video Game List show, did Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 landed number 15 on that list, compared to season 2 where Diablo 2 ranked, I believe, number 6. It ranked 6. So Diablo 2,
very different panels
by that nerdy site's own volition, is clearly a better game than Tony Hawk.
Well, like the first season was the editorial, like the gaming editorial team of that nerdy site. The second season was a bunch of guests.
Yeah.
But then again, I also don't deny that Diablo 2 was an epic game changer in PC gaming. It had like the breadth of character options you had. Like Diablo 2 was awesome as all hell, and a remake of it will, like, if Vicarious Visions does the Vicarious Vision, like they are, like what they do, and they're allowed to do that, I fully anticipate it being really, really incredible.
Fun fact:
I will allow
both
that,
of these
Trevor.
games were also vetoed in their respective seasons. But
and I'll allow it too, because I always
Diablo
reference
2,
Nightfire being number 19. So it's it's totally legitimate.
Scott put Diablo 2 out there in round 1 of season 2, and it was vetoed by Aaron, but Brandon and Zyger overruled the veto, so it survived. Unlike Tony Hawk, which got vetoed and then got brought back in a second pull. So yeah, just fun tie into that other show we used to do that I need to bring back still at some point.
Interesting.
It's a new year. It's a new time. That show needed
exactly
after how season 2 ended.
But transitioning over to our second topic of the show, this is actually one Cam put in Slack, so I'm going to kind of throw it to him. Yep. Cam, you dropped in, I haven't even had the chance to really read after just the brief thing you shared here, but from GamesIndustry.biz, and I believe Rebekah Valentine was the author of it as well.
Also, special shout out to her because today was her last day. Yeah, special shout out to Rebekah. Today was her last day at GamesIndustry.biz.
Going to IGN.
On. Is that what that was? I didn't see her announcement of where she was going.
Oh yeah. That made waves. Yeah, she's head to IGN's team.
Yeah.
Great. That's an incredible and wonderful addition.
She announced it via a Jackbox T-shirt that like some of her friends made during a Jackbox Party Pack game. It's like of a like an elephant with a bloodshot eye, and it basically says like I work for IGN or something like that. Like she had told like
That's
a core
great.
group of friends they played some Jackbox, and that shirt ended up coming up and being a winner or something. So she made that shirt or she bought that shirt and now has that and used it to announce it. It was very cute.
That's super cute. I've really I've been a massive fan of hers for several years now. And the work that GamesIndustry.biz does in general is fantastic. But the work she in particular did recently about give me just 1 second here to pull it up because I want to make sure that there's a couple of things I want to that I'm going to be pulling from it that I want to make sure. Sorry, my Slack is being slow. Trying to pull it up.
Yeah. While you're pulling that up, Rebekah is probably the most referenced journalist on this show so far in its nearly year of running, and GamesIndustry.biz obviously is probably one of our go-to most both of our articles today are from GamesIndustry.biz. Yep.
Not only that, but when I ran that nerdy site KGN/Naughty Gamers.
Damn, Cam took the hostile takeover there.
I know, right? My bad. No, when I ran when I was running my own outfit, years ago, GamesIndustry.biz quickly became the go-to where I pulled most of our stories from. So yeah, Rebekah Valentine. This is published literally today, this morning. Essentially an independent studio famously known for the Darwin Project, which launched and collapsed in early 2020 this year.
Last year.
We are in 2021. It is a new year. It is a new era for life in this country. Okay. So at the Game Awards, they announced another game that they were doing called Season. It made a lot of waves. It looked like a very interesting game that a lot of us kind of, especially here at that
Frank's game of the show.
Yeah, it's Frank's game of the show at PAX East 2020. That was Frank's game of the show. It was we were all really enamored with it. And unfortunately, we've received some news that needed to be reported on. That it turns out that the co-founders of the studio. Sorry, I'm trying to Scavengers Studio.
Scavengers,
yep.
Yeah.
Scavengers Studio has been essentially. Sorry, I'm trying to make sure I say this correctly. So Simon Darvaux.
I would say Darvaux and Amélie
Lamarche. Yeah, Amélie Lamarche. So Darvaux and Lamarche are co-founders of Scavengers Studio. Darvaux himself is a former co-founder of Spearhead Games and a designer at Ubisoft. There has been reports of, it has been reported on that there has been some very gross and very intentional misconduct and harassment and, in one case, assault in regards to accusations against Darvaux, as well as massive cover-up done by Lamarche. It's a small studio of about 40 people, give or take, and multiple people were willing to speak, anonymously, of course, because they fear reprisal.
Yeah, I believe she had 9 current and former employees.
Yep.
Were interviewed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so Darvaux, essentially, it's I hate to say it, but it's the typical, when we hear these stories and we see these reports, it's the typical story of a co-founder or a very important figurehead of the company having the team of his boys, in this case he called them his commandos, and the toxic environment that they created. Whether it was something just as straightforward and sexist as saying that the main character in season shouldn't play a guitar, but should play a ukulele instead because, quote unquote, it wasn't realistic because the guitar is too complicated for a woman. And that going unchallenged and nobody saying anything about it. That's a very small, minor thing that does not include the harassment, the as well as what occurred at a Christmas party where Darvo was inebriated and proceeded to put his hands on his employees in a sexual manner that could definitely constitute sexual assault. It wouldn't be on harassment at that point.
Yeah,
So,
the quote is that he was in full predator mode, and
That's
one
what I had put up
of
as
the
well.
women impacted. And this was so it wasn't a Christmas party; it was a holiday, maybe a post holiday party. It was a company party in January of 2019, is where this one kind of came to a head. And yeah, one of the women harassed, quit the following Monday, and then another one left not long after.
yeah,
It's it's a gross and messy story, and complicated by the fact that Darvo and LaMarche have been, at least in the past, in a relationship. It's unclear whether they still are, but her now being the CEO of the company represents a very clear conflict of interest with complaints brought forth about Darvo. A lot of the allegations within Rebekah's article here are that she's covering things up or not instituting any kind of disciplinary actions on Darvo. And in a company that small, there's no HR, so
she was HR.
Anybody who she effectively does the HR roles and responsibilities. But if you have issues that you want to that are related to either of them, people had no recourse effectively.
Yeah, and even if it was just about Darvo, you're supposed to go to somebody who, even if they're not currently in a romantic relationship, does have a deep, close relationship with Darvo that it's very clear came first before the safety and security and wellness of the employees. So, it's another. I hate to say it. It's another one of these stories. It's stories we need to talk about and we need to put shine a light on, because this kind of stuff is still happening, or if it has happened in the past, people have not suffered the consequences of their actions in regards to it.
I mean, given that he was formerly a Ubisoft developer, doesn't surprise me at all based on the history of abuse that we kind of now understand that company has dealt with and has swept under the rug over the last 20 some odd years or whatever. So yeah, him leaving there. Spearhead Games is a developer that I enjoy. I've enjoyed a couple of their games. I didn't realize he had kind of founded them, so that sucks as well.
He left. So they founded. So Darvo. I actually did some research on this because I've been a very big proponent for Project Witchstone, which is still in development. And Trevor's been a fan of Omen Sight, and I think, and was it Destiny that you were a fan of as well?
It was Stories: The Path of Destinies. Yeah. I played Omen Sight. I don't think I really got too deeply into Omen Sight. I thought Omen Sight was a little lacking for me, but I really liked Stories. Yeah.
It should be noted, Darvo. So they founded, I almost said Vicarious Visions. Gosh, sorry. The link to the article for the Vicarious Visions article is right next to this. So, but no, they founded Scavengers Studios in, I want to say it was 2017 or 2018. And so he is not listed at on their website as a founder or anything. So we can only speculate at this point, but I would not find it very far-fetched that even though he gets to claim himself as a co-founder, he's not referenced as a founder anywhere on their stuff. So I would not be surprised if he things didn't he tried pulling this stuff there and it didn't work out for him. So he decided to form his own with his girlfriend at the time, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big kind of excerpts from the article to me is a quote Almost every source we spoke to described Scavengers as an environment hostile to women, a boys' club culture that was largely permitted by its co-owners, or in Darvau's case, actively led by. Several women were frequently degraded by male employees, including Darvaux, and treated as if they did not know what they were talking about, even when speaking from a position of expertise about their own work. This was said to have happened in casual conversations, public team meetings, and on the studio's work Slack, end quote. And then it goes into, like from being degraded to obviously being, sexist remarks, behaviors, assault in one case. And then it has Darvaux himself with a quote, which again is, quote, one source said that Darvaux later explained his behavior to others by comparing himself to a dog in heat, unable to control himself, end quote. And so I think, again, as someone who did a podcast about essentially David Cage for like a year and Quantic Dream and the problems there, this is just the same. It is that same thing all over again, whether it's, Ubisoft or Scavenger or Quantic Dream or so many other countless studios across the video game industry, right? Like, it is just that thing of people in positions of power using that power to either A, actively perpetuate like harassment and sexist behavior, abuse, degrading employees, to ignoring it, turning a blind eyes, or just kind of pushing out people who kind of told the truth of the story about one employee getting kind of just suddenly stopped showing up for work one day, and it was left up for question whether it was from her own volition or because she was pushed out.
After it was discovered that she was having one of the people who stopped showing up.
She was having an affair with.
She was having an affair with Darvaux apparently, and that was publicly announced.
Yeah, and so I think
to the entire team at a team meeting that she was doing that. So once again,
so I think it's a question for me of just, who knew what when in terms of the leadership positions at Scavengers Studios. And it seems pretty blatantly obvious based on the preponderance of evidence in front of us in this article that certainly the CEO of Scavenger knew more than enough to have done something to have not let this perpetrate for so many years. That's the thing, plural years, this is kind of went on, and literal leaving and resigning. The holiday party that Trevor mentioned obviously was not yesterday. It was more than a year ago, right? And these people are still involved at the studio. I think that it sucks from a selfish position because I was really excited for seasons, and so this sucks to have this kind of news come out the studio. But from a way more important perspective, it sucks because these people, the 30 or 40 employees that work there, are being put in this situation where they're in a toxic work environment for years. And when they find the courage to bring forward their complaints, and to call out this kind of toxic bullshit, nothing happens. And the CEO of the studio basically turns a blind eye and does nothing. Or again, pushes people out basically that complained about it. And so I don't know, this is a studio that it seems to need such drastic overhauls in terms of how it is being run and people in charge of it that I don't even know what to expect, right?
Well, it should be noted also.
It's almost from the ground up that it needs to be reformed.
100%.
Cam, you can go.
Sorry about that. Really, when I look at it, there are two games that are coming out of the studio. One is Darwin Project, which was a failed battle royale that has the prestigious honor of lasting longer than Cliffy B's, but that's about it. And then to the point where they abandoned it in 4 months, and so you have a massive failure like that. Then Seasons gets announced. We see it at the trade shows. It looks like it really looks
just real quick. It's Season singular.
Thank you, Season. So Season gets announced, and you have a game that is very strongly artistically driven. It's being made by a completely different team than Darvau's team, and looks beautiful. Has a female-led character, is very much in a very different vein of something than you'd get from Darvaux. At one point is expressed that he is known for
gameplay-oriented, fast-paced things. I'm looking at the quote right now.
Thank you. And so for that, it's a matter of like just definitely different styles. But it turns out that after Darwin Project crashed and burned, he joined the season team and has been working on that. And so like you don't even get the opportunity to be like, well, it's a different team that's still part of the same studio. He's in it. He's part of that studio's DNA. And because he not only is he a co-founder, but he is consistently a part of every project they're working on. He has not been disciplined. He has not been getting removed as CEO just to have his partner, like business partner or maybe otherwise, take the reins instead, and then issue the most boilerplate sexual harassment training that he himself, when Darvo is cracking jokes at. There's no consequences to this man's actions being taken here.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, you have like we as people in even on the amateur level of news media in gaming have to report on this and talk about it. But on top of that, it really calls into question, okay, so this game that we were all really looking forward to, do we just say no? Like, we're not going to buy it, we're not going to preview it, we're not going to review it? Like is this what we're going to do? And like that'll come up later this year, I'm sure, but as far as like internal discussions here and definitely in other places as well. But like at some point, like we get these stories, we get these reports, and a lot of times it's not till these people are out of their positions of power. This is one of the times where we're seeing it where somebody's in a position of power, and now we have to ask, like, if they don't do something about it, if they don't do something about Darvo, and here's the thing, who's going to be doing something about it? Because the two people in charge of that studio are the two people who are the core part of the issues and toxicity at that studio. What possible reforms can be made there when the very foundations of that place are the very thing that's wrong with it?
Yeah, it's the same issue we always have with like Randy Pitchford. Like how much less problematic would it be to enjoy Borderlands if Randy Pitchford wasn't at Gearbox, but he's 51% owner of Gearbox, so he's never going to be ousted. And like the only hope I have in this regard is that like clearly I think in the season announcement, I think it was like basically, I think like PlayStation is a partner with them on it for PS5. So hopefully Sony kind of hears this report, sees people talking about it and saying this is bad, and puts pressure on LaMarche and Devo to, was it Devo? No,
Darvo.
I've clicked away. Darvo. Like forces them to resign, basically. But yeah, the fact that it is the two of them at the highest heights of their of power within the organization, it's unlikely that that's going to happen, and so it is unfortunate. A couple things I wanted to clarify. Cameron, you alluded to this, but yeah, the creative director on Season is Kevin Sullivan, so somebody different from Darvo, and to Darvo working on Season. The article kind of talks about, despite complaints, Darvo ended up working on Season anyway. But those we spoke to who are at the studio, who are still at the studio, said they remain unclear what his exact role in the project is. As Sullivan is still serving as creative director, one suggested Darvo seemed to only come to work on Season when he was bored or frustrated with other tasks. So there's also like there's mention made of another game down the line that Scavenger is working on now that Darwin Project is done. So maybe that's where Darvo's attention really lies. Obviously, we can't. Even from this article, we don't have a strong sense of like how integral he is to the development of Season. Maybe he is more hands off. But yeah, to ultimately the point, the fact that he is still at the studio and is getting kind of creative input and maybe last word input on some decisions, and they do touch on the idea that Season is changing as a result of Darvo being a part of that project and the focus of that game changing from what initially had sold people on it. It is problematic, and yeah, it's definitely one that hits for us because everybody was really everybody who touched it, who played it at PAX East last year, was really excited, both from us and from our friends over at 6-1 Indie in particular.
Yeah.
And then yeah, everybody was like super jazzed, super excited, super stoked for it when it got announced. It was one of the standout games, I would say, of the Game Awards,
Yeah.
kind of in its
Mm-hmm.
cool little indie vibe thing that it had going for it. And it's unfortunate that people here that were interviewed touch on the idea that that they somebody said basically, if half of what I know of Season is true, then the game is going to be great. But I do not feel comfortable with Scavengers being praised as a fun, cool, indie inclusive
That's it.
place.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's definitely unfortunate. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
I
That's
I I don't anticipate, but I would hope to see like a summary or not, that's the wrong word. Like a firm resignation from LaMarche and
mhm.
Darvo, but they to their credit, compared to Adam Badowski last week talking about Cyberpunk, like they responded to Rebekah's request for comment. They provided a lot of information saying, so a lot of what is mentioned in the article is from the past, from maybe 2 years ago even, and they said that there have been changes made starting in 2019, so potentially following that January party or whatever, with more of a focus on HR efforts and stuff. But people basically have said that it hasn't really changed anything. It's half-hearted, it's half-assed kind of measures that have been put in place, and none of them are really being enforced to drastically change the culture.
Yeah.
So it's definitely unfortunate. I hated reading this. I hated how similar it reminded me of
Yeah.
places I've worked at. Where places I've worked at, for example, were like I remember on day one going through the the HR book, HR manual with the head of HR, and then basically being like, well, but we're in the arts, so sexual harassment, let's laugh that off. And it was like, no, and I remember talking with people at the time, like it was weirdly a similar experience. I mean, I'm not there anymore. I don't really care at this point. This was at Phoenix Theater, which is similarly run by an artistic director and a managing director who are married, a gay couple in this instance. And the artistic director has a notorious history for getting drunk and handsy at parties and stuff. And a lot of people laugh it off because it's theater and stuff. But I was very much like, if he ever tried to do that with me, I would not have I would have been like, no, I'm going to see a lawyer. I'll take this company from you if I have to. But a lot of people just kind of turn their heads, and this was many years ago as well, so pre
Yeah.
Me Too stuff. So maybe things have changed, but I have no idea what the current status of kind of things are in that culture. But it's unfortunate. Both
Yeah.
that place was a boys club, just a different kind, and certainly it sounds like this experience was also problematic.
I don't know. My
Yeah. I
experience.
think the quote.
I would just to tag in on
No,
that.
you can go, Cam, real quick.
Yeah. My experience in being in major corporate America is I have seen and I have been through an enormous amount of sexual harassment training.
Mm-hmm.
Not because of me personally, but because that is heavily enforced. Especially after the
Yep.
Me Too, they rolled out a whole bunch of updates to things to kind of it wasn't so much as they were clearing up the lines, because the lines in corporate America are drawn. Whether those consequences are enforced is a completely different question, and usually
Mm-hmm.
not, up until recently. But as far as the training that I've been through at the different places that I've worked, I have seen bad videos from the 80s. I have seen, or 90s, an interactive FMV game, um, that dealt with sexual harassment training, as well as other training stuff too. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and like there's that stuff, and then I've taken stuff where they're like, hey, degrees of severity, knowing where things are at and stuff like that in more recent years, has been much better.
Have
But
you have you also, because I've gone through many of those trainings as well, and I've also, much like the people at Scavengers Studio, I've sat through those trainings and I've watched perpetrators laugh these things off and joke about sexual harassment stuff, and they were people in power, and no recourse came of it. And I went to HR after the fact. I said, hey, these things that they were saying were deeply irresponsible, and nothing happened. So
No, I couldn't say so. There was only like the only time I can think of like one like borderline employee that I worked with was back when I worked at PayPal, and like he was without a doubt like misogynist, pretty sexist, like not a great dude at all. But he never went as far as to like he did not make jokes about harassment or stuff like that. He'd make jokes about like he was a misogynist. He made jokes about women that nobody found funny and told him so. But
I will always remember.
Even he knew you don't like that's not something you joke about. So I've never been in, especially since a lot of those trainings are like you and a computer, so you don't really like have that experience
Gotcha.
of multiple people. But
Ours was not. Ours was like all staff meetings. An outside HR rep kind of came in, did a presentation. It was the same presentation every year for like 4 or 5 years, and it was sexual harassment as well as like discrimination and all that kind of stuff. It was all rolled into one, and every year it would basically be like, we're going to go through 20 scenarios, and you're going to say, like, we're going to discuss as a company, is this harassment, is this discrimination, like what are the lines? And one of the examples was your coworker Joe has a picture of his wife in a bikini on his desk. Is that appropriate? And basically, like, the answer is no, it's not appropriate. But one of the executives was like, well, is it a one piece or a two piece?
Oh my
gosh. Just like, fuck you. Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you.
That's
I think so I mean the final, in terms of the season, before we've kind of branched out to something else, but the final thing in seasons, I think Trevor summed it up really well with the quote that he kind of provided there as kind of the wrap up. In terms of, I mean, like, Trevor's kind of brought forth a new question in terms of, like, to wrap that one up. I mean, like, I feel like I'm a good bridge in between the two of you, where it's like, I've had a full swath of spectrum of people who have dealt with sexual harassment or just like discriminatory behavior in a workplace in general, right? In all my years working, whether that be in Missouri or Texas now, or online or in person stuff. I've dealt with a broad spectrum of it all, right? And like, I think I've definitely been in workplaces where, people who had, sexist behavior or racial behavior or anything of the sort, just weren't really punished, and where it was laughed off, and where it was nothing really kind of happened to the perpetrators and the people, or they maybe were people in charge even. And then I've had other instances where I've been like really fortunate to be like in great workplaces where like, bringing forward, being part of a group of people that brought forward complaints about a person and having them be fired because they're like made racist comments about like my partners or someone else's partner or like this kind of stuff. And so like, I've kind of experienced the full spectrum of that on both sides, on the good and bad. And I think that having seen that, it was almost such a like shock to mind of like, oh, this can be handled so quickly and so almost effortlessly when in an actual competent organization, where like from when a complaint is made to when they'll sit down and interview to when the person, if there's, actions to be taken, it's taken, and they're let go or punished, whatever kind of the punishment might be, can all happen in such a short time frame if you're in an actual competent organization, versus something where you'll make a complaint or you complain about a coworker or a manager, anybody kind of within the organization, and nothing happens, and you just keep making constant complaints, or coworkers make constant complaints and nothing ever changes. And like, to see the full spectrum almost made it that much more shocking when I was in an actual organization where it was handled efficiently and well, and it made it more of like, oh, it can be done this quickly, it can be done just like this, just in a like almost 7 fingers, and it's been taken care of. Like, I think so often in these conversations that we have, whether it's about Scavenger or Quantic Dream or any studio or organization out there.
This
in our
definitely
own
reminded me a lot of
experiences.
the Riot story from
Yeah.
from a couple years ago.
Definitely
Yeah.
remind me a lot
Riot
of the Riot
games.
Absolutely,
story.
or Riot or any of these studios, of like whether again it's in the industry or in our personal lives, it can almost feel like a kind of Herculean task, right? Of like you're pushing a burtle up the hill and it just comes rolling back down at you. And this is an instance where it's like, no, it doesn't have to be that hard though. Like it can be done really just very simply. And like these are the facts. Most people have brought forward this evidence. Is very clear this person kind of has done these things. Action must be taken, and action is taken, and that shouldn't seem like a insurmountable and impossible to achieve change to occur within an organization. And so the fact that it seems like the half-hearted reforms that have been made at Scavengers, to bring it kind of full circle back to the main topic, are just that, half-hearted, and are ones that have happened, 2 years later from the holiday incident or other incidents kind of related in the piece. Real change hasn't occurred is disheartening because it doesn't have to be this hard. It doesn't have to be this difficult to enact change at these studios and to kind of hold people account for their actions and their words and the deeds. That's what I'll say. Branching out, we're going to shift another hard shift in this episode. Cameron, you have a shout out to share this week. What is the shout out you brought forward for the episode here? Was that Cameron?
That
or
was me.
That was Trevor. I was like,
Shout-out?
I did not.
Oh,
I'm like,
I
I
just
had
assumed.
no time to
I
come up
just
with a
assumed.
shout out today, dude. I was working all day.
Oh,
Yeah, no, this was the shout
Trevor,
out.
what is the shout out you shared?
I shared in our Slack. It's probably shortly after last week's episode. But our friend and Cameron's makeshift son, as he likes to say, Moises Taveras, had his first piece over at Paste published. Paste magazine. I believe is an intern over there right now.
Yeah, yes,
Much
he is.
like Jess Cogswell was kind of before him. And yeah, he wrote a piece called "The Last Year Has Made Left 4 Dead More Powerful Than Ever," and it's basically he wrote this published January 19th, so it's about a week old here as of our recording. And it's basically talking about how he had a lot of troubles in 2020 and kind of withdrew himself from a lot of his kind of communities and friends and stuff like that. He did something I wish I could do of kind of removed himself from social media in a lot of cases. And he found himself kind of coming back to people via Left 4 Dead. He kind of played that with some friends, and it kind of got him really back into a communal spirit. And I just, in addition to that being a cool kind of story and the power of video games, I just also wanted to shout out Moises because was he kind of the go-to punching bag for input, or am I misremembering that?
No, you're remembering OK Beast. He was the go-to
okay.
punching bag for OK Beast.
I thought like George or Logan would have like a send off of like, if you liked what you heard, please blah blah blah. If you didn't, tweet at Moises or something like that.
That was definitely a recurring bit. It was
was
either
that? Okay.
it would be Moises or Christian would be the two people we usually sent people to tweet at.
That's fair.
But yeah.
I'm extremely proud of him. Funny enough, I actually just sent a picture of myself and my two boys, Eli and Moises. Sent it to the moon, or we'll be going to the moon.
Cool.
So that is the shout out. Is a very good shout out, Trevor. Paste just does great work in general. Check out all of their stuff. But that is the show. Congrats, you made it, everyone. If you like what you heard, you can go support us over at patreon.com/thatnerdysite, like all of our wonderful patrons have. Their support means the world to us, especially with how crazy and topsy-turvy 2020 and 2021 has been. And so we appreciate it immeasurably. And it makes shows like this and like that D+ show happen. So thank you all. Again, you can go over to patreon.com/thatnerdysite. Check out all of the wonderful perks, rewards you get there. If I do say so myself, this month's Patreon exclusive episode was worth $1. And again, that's patreon.com/thatnerdysite. You can also go support us by rating, reviewing, liking, subscribing, sharing with your friends all across podcast services across the globe. It really does help newer horror-ish shows like this. Go give us 5 stars. Tell us why you like us. Tell us if you could hear Trevor's water dripping in the background. You shouldn't be able to. I can't. Do you have supersonic hearing?
It just dripped right
generally
there.
Let us know your thoughts. And just generally let us know your thoughts on the podcast all across That Nerdy Site collection. Otherwise, you can go find Cameron at Rev Cabot on the internet. Cameron, anything you want to plug?
Yeah. I definitely want to, I'll just secondary the shout out from earlier. Go check out Moises' piece. He's an incredible writer. He's very brilliant, and I'm very, very, very proud of him and excited to see what he is going to be writing next.
There you go. You can go find Trevor at Trevor J. Starkey on the internet. Trevor, anything you want to shout out?
Yeah, so first I watched the last drop that came down, and then I checked the Audacity, and it didn't make a blip in the audio. So you should not have been able to hear any of the water droplets throughout the episode. Fingers crossed. But the thing I will give a shout out to is go check out Logan and I sat down and Logan watched me play through the first couple missions of Hitman 3. We solved a murder mystery. Or did we? No, we solved it. I have no problem putting that spoiler in in this stuff. But yeah, go check that out. It will, by the time this episode goes live, it will have been uploaded to our YouTube channel. So you can go check that out at youtube.com/thatnerdysite and go see our Hitman 3 kind of our initial impressions. And basically Logan and I really want kind of a murder mystery detective game now in that same kind of style, because it was just a ton of fun running around the manor house and finding clues and interrogating suspects and stuff like that.
Yeah, as you can go find me at Lefty Logie or Lefty Logie, Loggy on the internet. As is typical, Trevor stole my shout out. But yes, I also second it. It was a blast playing through Hitman 3 with Trevor this past Saturday. Like he said, the Let's Play will go live already by the time you're listening to this. And yeah, I mean, it's great. It was a ton of fun. I would absolutely die for a murder mystery just game kind of in that format. Maybe that's sort of what we'll get from James Bond that we might be seeing in the next few years, some sort of kind of vibe like that. But yeah, it was great. It was a ton of fun. The Dubai, with the first level, was also really fun, I think, and kind of goofy. And there are the Dubai one in particular had some really funny moments. In particular, knocking out a guy in a bathroom and then like crouching out of the bathroom as somebody, an attendant looked at us. But yeah, there's some good moments throughout that Let's Play.
I went through in the time since we've played that, I went through and did like all of the challenges, and I've basically like 100% to Dubai at this point, and it has some of my like intentionally some of the challenges there are some of the funniest moments in the game. In particular, one that I'll kind of like tease is you can find an explosive golf ball, and one of the characters, when he gets really mad, will go and like golf off the top of the building. And you get him mad by distracting him as he's trying to like dictate his like memoir or something like that. So you like you make a noise and just wait until he gets mad. He'll leave and he'll go to another place, and then you like make a noise there too, and he gets mad again. He's like, screw it, I'm gonna go golf. And so if you've like positioned the explosive golf ball, he's not gonna have a fun. I want to say it's like early birdie or something like that is the challenge to complete that one and basically blow him up via an explosive golf ball, because that's what you have. And even if you like find out how the explosive golf ball is there, is even another fun little like, that's a weird, cool, okay, yep. So
Hitman's great. Yep. Everyone go check out the Let's Play. Go check out, I'm sure we'll have more Hitman thoughts in the coming days and weeks. Otherwise, though, you can go find That Nerdy Site at That Nerdy Site all across the internet. For myself, for Cam, for Trev, for all of That Nerdy Site, you can go, again, find us at That Nerdy Site all across the internet. And until next time, play your games and be good to each other.